Now that the chips have fallen in the Donald Trump off the ballot case in Colorado, we talk about some of what this means, where this goes, and some good and bad takes coming out of the Republican field. So we'll be going over what this is, what's happening there, and what we do with that. But I promise, unlike last Tuesday, we are going to limit the time that we spend on this today because we have a ton of other news to get to, which is why we're doing a second stream this week. In other news, North Korea fires test ballistic missiles into the ocean and threatens more aggressive action after the U.S. has screwed them over once again. So we'll go over what Kim Jong-un's grievance is with the United States, this time at least, what's happening there, and where we go with that. Biden scrambles to win over swing voters as support from the black community goes away from him. So we'll go over some of the campaign news, what's happening there, and what we do with that. And since we're talking about the Supreme Court right now, the Supreme Court has refused to block an Illinois law banning some high-powered rifles. So we'll be talking that and, well, maybe even getting a little laugh about our principled conservatives over in the Supreme Court. It is going to be all of this and more over here on Contemporary. So grab some friends, get some snacks, get some new people in here, and we'll see what we have the discussion on. And oh, holy night, the stars are brightly shining. It is the night, even though it's a few days before, of our dear Savior's birth. I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary. Wow, it's a little weird to be streaming every night in a week again, especially this close to a holiday. I promise, like, you guys, I said that I was going to get through everything on Tuesday. There was no way. As soon as I saw the Colorado news, I'm like, yep, half of this is going to get bumped, and I either have to pull it out of the news, and a lot of it I did deem important. That's why we're doing the second stream, or we got to come back here and do this later on in the week. And you know, it's been a thing that I've done since I started going into once a week instead of 5 nights a week, is the thought that we might have to go back to just, and I've said this before, once we get into election year, they are going to cram so much news down our throats. They're just, I mean, it's going to be a constant, nonstop thing. It's going to be a barrage of propaganda. Depending on whether it's coming from the left or the right, it's just going to be an absolute barrage. They are not going to stop until you are so sick of our government that you just want to turn off the TV and go, or just go and vote like, oh, well, I'll just go and vote for the lesser of two evils just to make it stop. I want to go back to movies and brainless sitcoms and things like that. Business as usual. You know, it's really weird that we come to this point, too, where we're coming in. And I understand we're 2 weeks away from an election year right now. But I've never seen it like this. Even in the Obama years, I've never seen it like this. And we were promised a return to normalcy. A return to that pie in the sky, come home, watch 2.5 Men or whatever is on the TV at the time, and what's popular at the time, and then go to bed and not have to worry about so much of what's going on in Washington. And, well, it got good ratings for the mainstream media, so they cranked it up to 11. And you can see it as the fact that we're coming here. And I don't want to go back to 5 days a week because I know that it was a burnout for a lot of people to come in here. But what I also know is there's a lot of important stuff that they're trying to cram in and trying to hope that you ignore when they pull things like what happened in Colorado. And I mean, even still looking at the stack that I have here, and I know I'm filibustering before we get started, but looking at the stack that I have here, I still don't have the Epstein client list on here because, well, part of it's because I know that nothing's going to happen. I'm going to come right out and say, I know full well for a fact that nothing's going to come out of it. I mean, it's probably going to get ignored, and, well, there were so many people who were ready to talk about it, and then all of a sudden we get the Colorado news as well. But I still bump that because I think foreign policy and fiscal policy are a bit more, how do we say, immediate. So we'll be going over that. I'm going to talk a bit about the Hunter Biden stuff too. So we have that going on, rules for me, not for thee, that kind of stuff, and more polling stuff in spite of what's happening in Colorado. So a lot to go over here today after that lengthy intro. Let's get into it. Let's get started. Before we do, make sure you guys go check out Great Programming. And I haven't shouted out a lot of people in quite a while, but go check out Great Programming, like the Daily Ignoramus. Go check out Steven. He's awesome, and he just did a lot of live streaming from America First. Go check out KTZed and Crimeland and Overruled. Go check out that Great Programming. The Porch Boys have not been back in quite a while, so you should go check them out, but they would have to put out content before you went out and checked them out. Mr. Behavior, he's getting back into the swing of things. I know he and I are going to start working on a new project together. And there's a host of more things you guys should go and check out there. A lot of great independent content. I can sit here and vouch for them for the beginning. And let's get into our news of the day, shall we? I know I haven't done shout-outs since we went to weekly, but we got to keep doing shout-outs here. And we are going to start, unfortunately, even though we spent 40 minutes talking about the Colorado stuff this past Tuesday, we're going to start with the Colorado stuff again. So let's get started. Let me check the live chat, see if you guys are even saying anything. Helix is here over on the Rumble side. Welcome over on Helix. And yes, I do take live chat in between topics. The Mogwai, it's effing Christmas Miracle. Now, if only Harris becomes our next president. It might be back here. You want to bring back brainless sitcoms? You want to bring back Friends? I have never seen Friends, just so you know. It was on my watch list on Netflix, and then they took it off Netflix, and I don't want to spend the money on Hulu, even though I might now because of the King of the Hill reboot. I actually might axe Netflix just because of the King of the Hill reboot, but that's coming. You'll see that 3 days a week. New York and California is looking at Colorado and screaming, how the F did we not think of that? Well, we'll go over some of that too. Silentcaster was spotted streaming on Sunday. Yes, go check out Silentcaster too. That's another great one to go check out. Over on the Twitch side, Silentcaster with a K. A lot of Resident Evil stuff over there, so go check that out. All right, let's talk first about the Colorado GOP. NPC News is our top story for the day. Colorado GOP is discussing switching to a caucus if Trump remains off the primary ballot. We'll talk about DeSantis later, but in this just one little move, the Colorado GOP has shown that they have more integrity than Ron DeSantis. And I told you that before 2020, when people started saying he was the natural selection for 2024 and we'll have 12 years of Republican rule, 16 years of Republican rule. I said, no, do not trust this guy. There are videos out there. You can watch live stream. I live stream literally every day in 2020. Go check that out. Every weekday there was a live stream. I started in 2020, so that was after March. After March of 2020, there was a live stream every single day. And in 2020, I told you, DeSantis is not the answer. And goddamn it, I was right. But let's go to this first. From Adam Edelman, the Colorado Republican Party is considering switching to a presidential contest, to a caucus, in the event that Donald Trump is ultimately ineligible to appear on the state's primary ballot following a bombshell Colorado Supreme Court ruling. The prospective switch, which would come with major hurdles, would ensure that Coloradans are still able to cast their vote for the former president after the state's high court kicked him off the primary ballot, and that the state GOP would still be able to award delegates to him at the National Party's nominating convention. Making that change would require permission from the National Republican Party, which Romney McDaniel is stupid, but she's not career suicidal. I would hope that she's not suicidal to begin otherwise too, but she's not career suicidal. She knows well better than to leave him off the ballot, because that would be the end of their career and the end of her party. They know better than to do a brokered convention. A switch to a caucus system would also depend on the outcome and timing of a prospective U.S. Supreme Court ruling on whether Trump's name must remain off the Colorado primary ballot, unknowns that leave in question how and when and whether the state party would move forward with the change. We're at the mercy of the U.S. Supreme Court. We're not sure what their timing is going to be. We're figuring it out as we go, said Dave Williams, the chairman of the Colorado Republican Party, but we'll make our preparations to convert to a caucus while this is all playing out. I'm going to stop right there. If I was the head of the Colorado Republican Party and this option came across my table, that would have actually been the very first thing that I did. It wouldn't have been, well, we'll see what the Supreme Court is going to do. We'll see how this plays out. We'll see how the appeals go. It would have been, okay, you don't want him on the primary ballot? Well, fuck you then. We're having a caucus. We're having a big party in Colorado where weed is legal and everybody can get hammered on Coors beer. And we will show you how much we want your input on who we put on our ballot. And if the Supreme Court ruling does not go in our favor, we'll plan to do a caucus. But if it does go in our favor, then nothing will change, Williams added. Screw that, dude. You have the perfect opportunity to come out, get a bunch of people in your state, get a bunch of people from out of state into your state for the tourism, even if they can't actually participate in the caucus. They can listen to the speeches, they can buy the merch, they can do that kind of stuff. You have a golden opportunity to bring tourism into your state. And stick it to the Democrat Party. Mogwai is already picking on the Coors stuff. Get hammered on Coors? You can't get hammered on water. Nice. In emails and phone calls, other state and national GOP officials indicated that making the switch would be tricky and contingent on several dynamics that, for the time being, are unclear. You could announce it tomorrow and say that the caucus is going before the Iowa caucus, and you'd have record turnout. I'm telling you. The first step, Williams and others explained, would be for the Colorado GOP to request a waiver from the RNC that would allow the state party to award delegates based on the results of a caucus system, not a primary system. That'll take one phone call, dude. In October, the RNC had approved plans from all 50 state parties on how they would hold their nominating contest and award delegates for the National Nominating Convention in 2024. That's in Milwaukee, by the way. Williams predicted that he and other Colorado GOP officials would likely, in the next week or two, approach the RNC to start the process of obtaining a waiver in the event that the U.S. Supreme Court doesn't rule in our favor. Like, what are you waiting for? I understand that Christmas is in 4 days, but come on. That wouldn't slow the Democrats down. He said the process would be made easier by the fact that the Colorado state primary had in September embedded in its plan to the RNC a contingency in the event that Trump were to be removed from the ballot that essentially gave notice that we could ask for a waiver to convert from the primary system to a caucus system. So it does look like they were already planning for this, but I don't know. We'll continue to watch this and see what happens, but I'm going to say, and I said this right off the bat, this is one of the right answers. This really is. It was 4 Democrats who made an extra legal ruling because there has not been a conviction. I know that the Cope right now is trying to say, oh well, when the civil judge came out and said that she doesn't believe the 14th Amendment applies to him, but he still committed insurrection, that was a conviction. No, he never sat in front of a jury of his peers. You morons. I want to touch on that for just a sec before we get into the rest of the Cope from this, and I want to talk about that for just a sec. Now, the same party, and literally it's what they're doing, is they're reading cue cards. They're telling you what they were told to tell you. They don't know what they're talking about. They don't believe what they're talking about. But the same party that every single time there was a justified shooting, not even an unjustified shooting, because remember, we didn't riot over Patrick Loyola, which was an absolutely unjustified shooting. But when we had Michael Brown, the gentle giant Michael Brown, and Trayvon Martin, he could have been my son, Trayvon Martin. And St. George, hallowed be his name, and St. Jacob, hallowed be his name. Well, St. George was a different story because he actually died of asphyxiation. Can I say that on YouTube? I think the was enough for you guys to know what I was saying, but I just realized that I just got popped for a 3-year-old video on medical misinformation, 2-year-old video on medical misinformation. And they didn't even wait around for the appeal went in and 20 seconds later they said, denied. And I'm sure that was over the totally safe and unfettered medical procedure that came from Pfizer that we can't talk about on YouTube. I didn't even go back and look at the video. I'm positive that's what they pulled it down for. 100% positive, in fact. But when we had the St. Jacob shooting that launched Kenosha into what Kenosha turned into, and Trayvon and the gentle giant Michael Brown, when we had those, one of the things that came out was the police can't be a judge, jury, and executioner. Well, a civil court judge can't be the judge, jury, and executioner either. There's a reason that we hold our civil proceedings and our criminal proceedings in separate courts in front of separate judges. Well, in small communities, it's sometimes the same judge, but we treat them separately in civil and criminal matters. Because a civil matter, just like we saw in Colorado that led up to this, it was 6, quote, Republicans, which tells me it was probably a bunch of people who have been lifelong Democrats, but then made a Twitter account that says, I'm Team DeSantis, and I think that you Trump people are stupid. I think it was 6 of those people that went in there and said, it was an insurrection, we're suing to take him off the ballot. We're directly harmed. How were you harmed? We can't say, but we were directly harmed. We promise. Okay, it's Evil Orange Man. Stamp, we're going to hear your case. No, he totally had an insurrection, but the 14th Amendment doesn't apply. Don't burn my house down, please. That's how Colorado played out. And then the Supreme Court got involved and said, the lower court George said insurrection, so off the ballot he goes. So, that's what's happening with that. From an unlikely source here, which I know it says Yahoo News up here, but Yahoo News pulled this from the Huffington and Puffington Post. Nikki Haley makes a bold claim against Donald Trump in Colorado ballot comments. Now, before I read this article to you, I'm going to say, right off the bat, number one, I have no idea why I'm agreeing with Nikki Haley. But when I started my presidential analysis video, my candidate analysis videos, and even though I never finished those, because a lot of things changed, like I had the Nikki Haley video recorded, and then Israel happened. I think the same day. But I would always be fair in the candidacy, and when candidates said something right and did something right, I would give them credit for it. And Nikki Haley is right on the money with this one. I think she believes her abilities to be much higher than they are, but she is right on the money with this one. I can't believe I just said that. Away in Mar-a-Lago, a Trump he did steam, left off of the ballot in a state high on weed. They took our jobs. Thank you, Mogwai. All right. Ron Dicker of the Huffington Puffington Post. GOP presidential candidate Nikki Haley on Wednesday issued a bold boast after the Colorado Supreme Court ruled to omit frontrunner Trump from the state primary ballot. I'm going to defeat Donald Trump on my own, she said on Fox News. I don't need a judge to go and take him off the ballot. I don't think that he should be president. I think I should be president. God help us all for that one. I think our country would do a lot better if I was. Haley condemned the court's action, saying it was unthinkable and a threat to democracy that judges decided on their own to determine who couldn't be on the ballot. Nikki Haley said, the idea that judges are going to take it upon themselves to decide who can and can't be on the ballot is truly unthinkable. I'm going to defeat Trump on my own. I don't need a judge to go and take him off the ballot. Which we are supposed to be able to get a video from this, but it didn't embed, so we're going to listen to it on X instead.
Do you think that this is an injustice, this Colorado decision, and do you think it's wrongly decided by this court?
Thank you, Martha. I think this is, it goes back to our country being in disarray. The idea that judges are going to take it upon themselves to decide who can and can't be on the ballot is truly unthinkable. And I think the people of Colorado should be furious. I am going to defeat Donald Trump on my own. I don't need a judge to go take him off the ballot. I don't think he should be president. I think I should be president. I think our country would do a lot better if I was. Whoa. But we should have this race fair and square with him on the ballot just like everybody else. And the idea that we would go and say, just because these liberal justices don't like him, they want to take him off the ballot, that's not a democracy. That's not who we are. That's not what we need to do.
That is the exact right answer. That is 100% the right answer. And if you guys think that I'm just jumping on the Trump train because I want him to be on the ballot, number one, you guys know better than that. Anybody who's watched more than 4 episodes of Contemporary knows better than that. And furthermore, when it comes to Haley, and I said this exact same thing about Biden. If Biden thought that he could win, or let's be realistic, if Biden's handlers thought that he could win, Biden would go shuffle up to the stage. Hey, man, my fellow Americans. That guy that I got in the argument with on that stage a couple years ago. Yeah, I can beat him fair and square. I don't need the Justice Department to go after him, man. So I hereby issue a pardon, man. That's right. Yeah. But even before he's convicted, I pardon him for any crimes he might be convicted of, cause I can win fair and square, man. Come on. I'm gonna take him behind the woodshed, man. That's right. He thinks he can make an argument about what was I saying? Let's do a push-up contest, Donald. If Biden's handlers thought that he could win, that speech would be out there tomorrow. But what they're doing and what the DOJ is doing and what the Colorado State doing, this is a show of weakness to them. One of the things that I said immediately when all this came out was, we have to protect democracy by making sure people can't vote for who they want to. Ooh, that pissed a lot of people off. But that's Nikki Haley. Nikki Haley has the exact right answer. Yeah, I can beat him fair and square. Let's get the Justice Department out of this. Let me show you what I can do. I am woman, hear me roar. As cringe as it is, the exact right answer. God, I can't believe I'm agreeing with Nikki Haley. What universe are we in? Ron, on the other hand, so Ramaswamy, almost immediately as soon as this happened, came out and said, look, right now, if you don't put Trump on the ballot, I'm not going to participate in your corrupt primary system. And I'm not going to appear on the ballot either. I'm not even going to run in Colorado if that's what you're going to do. Hey, Ron, are you going to jump with me? Hey, Chris, are you going to jump in with me? Chris Christie, of all people, agreed with this. But Ron, what do you have to say, Ron?
And real quick, fellow GOP 2024 presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy saying he will remove himself from the Colorado ballot unless Trump's eligibility is restored. Would you do the same?
No, I think that's just playing into the left. I think the case will get overturned by the Supreme Court, but I've qualified for all the ballots. I'm competing in all the states, and I'm going to accumulate the delegates necessary. That's the whole name of the game in this situation. But I do anticipate that decision was political and will get reversed.
All right, Governor Ron DeSantis, thank you so much for joining me this afternoon.
I'm pretty sure that Ron DeSantis came in his pants as soon as that happened. Excuse the crudity. Hey, I might win a state. Especially after Ramaswamy came out and said that he wasn't going to jump on there, and it's presumed that Nikki isn't going to either. So, and now we've got California coming out here and saying that like, I don't have an article on this one, but the Secretary of State, the Elections Commission of California went to the Secretary of State and said, fine, anything you can do to do the same thing as Colorado does. I don't care how obscure the law is. Find anything to do the same thing. And now New York is talking about the same thing. Which, again, is stupid. And the MAGA, whether it's actual MAGA or if it's a bunch of people posing as MAGA to try to force a messy primary, are not coming up with the genius concept, too, of, hey, Biden is in a dereliction of duty. That's an insurrection. Why don't we pull him off the ballot in Texas? Well, because he's going to lose spectacularly in Texas. And you don't need to cheat for that. And the last one we're going to talk about on this before we move into other news. We've managed to spend another half an hour on this. One story, a half an hour. Comes to us from notable Paige Schill, former crackhead, and person who is still far behind on the child support, Jersey. My wife's son reliant. Since MAGA has started to hate states' rights after Colorado correctly branded Trump an insurrectionist loser, now is as good a time as any to talk about abolishing the Electoral College. Whoever wins the popular vote should win the election. And, I mean, we're running in so many other delusional takes on this. I have seen more delusional takes in the last 48 hours about the state of our legal system and what it is that we should do and what this means from all sides. From the progressive, the Paige Shills, from the Biden admin, from the DeSantis people, and yes, even from the MAGA people themselves, who are most affected by this. I have seen nothing but delusional take over delusional take and delusional take. Here is the bottom line. Here is why this probably gets overturned in the Supreme Court. But we also get riots at the Supreme Court because, evil orange man appointed 3 of the justices. But here is reality, and I mentioned this when I talked about the first article. The full reality of what is happening in the state of Colorado is this. The Fifth Amendment says no man shall be held in jeopardy of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. In a system that is supposed to be of the people, by the people, and for the people, liberty does include the ability to run for the presidency or any other office. You're not guaranteed the ability to win, obviously, but you have the ability to put your ideas out there, offer your name up to the ballot or to a major political party in this case. And if the major political party says, yeah, we think that we can win with you and we like what it is that you're saying, then yes, they have the liberty to go back and put you on the ballot. Because there's been no conviction, you haven't lost your right to life or liberty. And the 14th Amendment takes that even further, saying that it's not just federal courts that can't do that, it's states courts also cannot deprive you of life, liberty, or property without first giving you due process of law. In the 14th Amendment, it's in that funny Section 1 that nobody on the left has ever read. In fact, all the talking heads on the left just always say, the 14th Amendment, Section 3, because they don't want anybody else to read any other part of the 14th Amendment. And these same people were just screaming, absolutely 100% screaming, not that long ago, about how police cannot be judge, jury, and executioner, that everybody should get a trial before they're hurt or have their life taken away from them. Well, a civil trial is not a trial. The Donald didn't even get a chance to take and bring his own evidence back. And this does set a dangerous precedent, by the way, if this holds and goes through. Because it's basically saying, hey, as long as we accuse you of something that we don't like, we can take your liberty. And that is a direction that we do not need to be going down. All right. That is about enough of that. I'm sure we'll be talking more about this come next Tuesday. We have got to talk about North Korea, what would that be, our sixth threat of a war front since Biden took office? Let's read from CNN. North Korea test fires ballistic missile with potential to reach the entire U.S., Japan says. From Brad Linden in Gawan Bay. I'm guessing that person is Bay. That was a bad joke and I apologize. Seoul, South Korea. North Korea launched a possible intercontinental ballistic missile on Monday morning in what analysts said indicated the growing reliability of the reclusive state's illegal weapons program. The missile, launched Monday, exhibited the range to hit anywhere in the U.S., according to the preliminary assessment from the Japan Defense Ministry. The ICBM-class ballistic missile, launched this time, if calculated based on the trajectory, depending on weight and warhead, could have a flying range of over 15,000 kilometers, or approximately 9,320 miles. Meaning the whole of the U.S. territory would be within range, Shingo Miyake, a parliamentary vice minister of defense, told reporters at a news conference in Tokyo. Japanese authorities reported the missile flew at a highly lofted trajectory for about 73 minutes and to an altitude of 6,000 kilometers, or 3,700 miles if you don't use communist numbers, and a distance of about 1,000 kilometers, or 621 miles, before falling into the sea west of the northern Japanese island of Hokkaido. It would need to be fired at a flatter trajectory to hit the United States. And its ability, Pyongyang has yet to prove, according to the Joseph Dempsey Research Associate for Defense and Military Analysis at the International Institute for Strategic Studies. While lofted tests can provide assurances of full engine burns and staging, they do not represent the same challenges of a normal ICBM trajectory that includes The ability of a warhead to survive a prolonged, shallow re-entry into the atmosphere, or its accuracy over much longer distances, Dempsey told CNN. Yeah, if your missile blows up in the air, I mean, it's still going to cause damage, especially with a large magnetic pulse going off over the ocean, but it's not going to cause the same kinds of problems as landing in the middle of San Francisco. While lofted tests can provide the assurances, let's see, I read that one already. While the type of missile fired was not reported, Jeffrey Lewis, a professor at the James Martin Center for Non-Proliferation Studies at Middlebury Institute of the International Studies, said Monday its test was likely the third of the Hwasong-18 missile, a powerful solid-fueled ICBM North Korea also launched in April and July. It shows a maturing North Korean missile program, according to Lewis. You remember those 2 years that we didn't have to worry about this? Hey, I mean, we got to get brew out before it happens. I gotta go back and check some chat here too. In fact, let's do that first before we get into this. Nikki Haley is positioning herself for VP or high in his cabinet should Agent Orange win. I don't know about that, and I don't know that, well, the full true-on MAGA people would accept whoever the Orange Man says. Because it is a religion. Let's not kid ourselves on that one. But I don't think a lot of the middle and on the fencers would accept that. Because, again, I know Ben Shapiro was all excited when the Donald put Nikki Haley on as the UN ambassador. Okay, gang, I'm going to tell you right now, this is the best thing that Donald ever could have done. We need to have more Nikki Haleys, more in the government, and doing more foreign policy because Nikki Haley understands foreign policy. She knows what it is that we need to do, and we need to do more to deter Iran and take over the Middle East and make sure that Israel is safe. Okay, gang, Nikki Haley is all for Israel. Okay, and we need more of her in there. Nikki Haley is my spirit animal, which, I mean, the level of simptitude that came from Shapiro after I was still listening to Shapiro on the regular at that point, and the level of simp that came from Ben when Nikki Haley was announced as the UN ambassador was equal to none. All right. The Mogwai says, what, Jill? Hey, you said we get ice cream, man. Hey, who are all these people? What speech? Huh? What do you mean? I think I might need a new depend thing, man. Mogwai bring up a good point. Okay, hold up. Honestly, it wouldn't matter who was in office with that batshit crazy commie. He test fires a missile in the Sea of Japan if the Masked Singer isn't on. I don't know. He cooled his jets for a little while. That's a pun that I didn't intend right there, but he cooled his jets for a little while after the crossing of the DMZ. We didn't hear a lot from the Hermit Country for at least a little while. Our news media tried to make it seem like the Hermit Kingdom was going to pop off at any second, but we didn't hear a lot from them. Goats and Scarves says, landing in California is a problem? Well, we got to get Brew out of there first. I have a cousin that still lives in the LA area. We got to get him out of there, which he's working on that, by the way. He's looking at land in other states. He's not coming back here, which is lame, but he is looking at land in other states. So we got to get him out first before Pyongyang starts launching missiles. But like the article said, if everything that we're being fed about this stupid thing is true, then they can literally land this anywhere. They can land this in the courtyard between me and the next building. Goats and Scarves says, just hope it hits a fault line and makes California float off somewhere. Again, let's get the people we care about out of there first. If this is indeed the third successful flight test in a row. It would be a good record of reliability, he told CNN. While North Korea, like every other country, has a missile test fail, it's clear that the overall reliability of North Korea's missiles is quite respectable, Lewis said. So, yeah, he's bobbing off again. And he's thinking he's going to take it over. And he seems to think he has a reason this time. Fox News. With the reason. Not this Hoobastank song from when I was a teenager, but the actual reason. North Korea fires ballistic missile into the sea, blames U.S. for destabilizing the region. Well, they've been doing that since 1954. From Stephen Soares, or Soares, although we talked about Soares at the last conversation when we talked on Tuesday. North Korea launched a short-range ballistic missile into the sea on Sunday, South Korea said, as Pyongyang blamed the U.S. for escalating military tensions in the Korean peninsula. Again, that's not the name of the headline, or that's not the headline, that's the name of the paper. The missile was fired off North Korea's east coast, near its capital Pyongyang, and flew 354 miles before landing in the sea. The Japanese Coast Guard said the missile had fallen less than 20 minutes after its launch, Reuters reported. The South criticized the launch as a clear violation of UN Security Council resolutions that have banned the North from using ballistic technologies. North Korea's defense ministry issued a statement shortly after the launch, but did not mention the ballistic missile. Instead, the ministry criticized the U.S. for what it called a reckless military threat that was destabilizing the region, according to U.S. deployment of military assets, including strategic bombers and nuclear-powered submarines to South Korea. Yeah, I can see where that would start to piss some people off. The armed forces of the DPRK will thoroughly neutralize the U.S. and its vassal forces' attempt to ignite a nuclear war and thus reliably ensure peace and security in the Korean peninsula, a ministry spokesman said in a statement obtained by Reuters. Pyongyang also condemned Washington and Seoul's move to include nuclear operation scenarios in their joint drills, describing it as an open threat to potentially use nuclear weapons against the North and vowing to prepare unspecified offensive countermeasures. Well, that's not necessarily the case, but again, this is the state-run propaganda that we've been hearing since 1954, coming from North Korea about the United States. And this could be as much as South Korea and our military assets there saying, hey, China's nuclear armed, and so is supposedly North Korea. Hey, maybe we should actually take some defense about this, you know? Maybe we should be prepared for this. And just a brief on this one before we move on into military readiness from our country. North Korea's Kim threatens more offensive actions against the U.S. after watching a powerful missile test. Good luck. I know we have a severely depleted military right now and a puppet for a president. But I'm still pretty sure we've got enough military capability to make people forget the fact that North Korea existed. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un threatened more offensive actions to repel what he called increasing U.S.-led military threats after he supervised the third test of his country's most advanced missile design to strike the mainland U.S., state media reported on Tuesday. Kim's statement suggests he is confident in his growing missile arsenal and will likely continue weapons testing activities ahead of the 2024 presidential election. But many observers say North Korea still needs to perform more significant tests to prove it has functioning missile targeting the U.S. mainland. Well, he's going to sit there and shake his fist and say, "Oh, you bad Americans, you destabilize region. Who do something about it?" And the U.S. isn't going to do anything about it because, well, let's face it. One of the big thing, and heard a couple other commentators bring this up, is the fact that our current administration just doesn't understand how politics and business work in Asia. And while he may have been too inexperienced on the politics side to understand what the news media was going to do, the Orange Man, for all of his faults, did sit in a lot of business boardrooms and close a lot of deals in Asia. And he understands what their honor culture needs in order to give respect to the other people there. That is why we got the, I got the red button on my desk too, but mine actually works. It's the best red button, made out of rubies. The greatest red button out there. And mine actually works. Instead of just running to, okay, how do we make this peaceful? Just remember, Jong-un is best friends with Dennis Rodman. Oh, I know. That should tell you enough there. And yes, with our joke about Stephen Sarras, the author of the Fox News article, Lindsey Graham got the Mogwai's phone again and said, "Man, my hat is sore. I was, Jesus, Lindsey." I was actually hoping to see some more Mogwai action on Tuesday because we had a nice conversation about Lindsey Graham. I've not put the replay up yet, but I know you said you haven't seen the VOD on Twitch yet either, so I'll put it on the audio platform. I'm going to stay up a little bit late. What's nice about work today and work around the holidays is that we had as a thank you and celebration of Christmas at work, we had a nice big barbecue lunch catered in, and I am probably not going to have dinner tonight, so I'm going to sit here and I'll get this episode and Tuesday's episode up on Spotify, so you guys can go check that out. They'll be ready by morning. And then you can put them in the car while you're traveling for holidays. All right, let's talk about military readiness from the Daily Mail. U.S. enters 2024 with its smallest military in over 80 years as active duty troop numbers sink to less than 1.3 million. And all branches except Space Force miss recruiting goals, and Pentagon issue national call of service to Gen Z. Good luck. One thing I've noticed too, like as we're moving in this country into the later part of the millennials and Gen Z, has anybody noticed that dudes are getting smaller? Now I am, and I put on a little bit of weight here starting when I was engaged the second time, and my German descendant fiance thought that she could keep me with food, and for 2.5 years she was right. But yeah, I put on a little bit here, but I'm 6 feet tall and 220 pounds, and for my height, even though usually it's more distributed here and not so much here, I'm pretty well an average size for approaching 40. Most of the men my age are about that size, usually maybe a little slimmer or weight distributed a little bit differently, but even considered to be on the small side for weight wise, I would be considered a skinny guy under most circumstances. I tower over people in their 20s and their young teens, especially dudes. I've noticed that lately. There are a few that get in and get to be my height, but I seem to tower over almost everybody else. I don't know if there's something in the water or what's going on with that. This is from Nick Allen over at dailymail.com. The U.S. is set to enter 2024 with its smallest military in more than 8 decades and faces one of its greatest challenges as it tries to boost recruiting from Gen Z, the Pentagon officials said. Tell them you'll forgive their student loans, since Biden's plan completely screwed that. Under the $886 billion annual defense bill passed by Congress this week, total active duty troop numbers will fall to 284,500 next year. That's the lowest total since before the U.S. entered the Second World War in 1941. And officials have said there should be a national call to service. Well, service guarantees citizenship, and again, I miss that, Mark. I do look back and wish that I would have gone the military route at this point now, knowing what I know now. I wish that I would have. But you can't go back and change. We haven't invented time travel yet. Recent recruitment targets were missed in the Army, Navy, and Air Force, although the Marine Corps and the newly established Space Force reached their goals. This week, Ashish Vazirani, the Pentagon's acting Undersecretary for Personnel and Readiness, told the House Armed Services Committee that the individual services missed their recruitment goals in 23 by combined 41,000 personnel. Well, a part of that is because you dishonorably discharged a bunch of people for not getting the can't say that on YouTube. And therefore, when you came back and said, oh, we're real sorry and we're rescinding that rule, a lot of them turned around and gave you the finger. For good reason. Now, and again, with the vaccine thing, and I said this back at the time, I mean, the military, Ron Helton, back when he used to hang out here, brought this up a lot. Where the military literally came in and, I mean, once you sign the contract, you're the property of the military until your term expires. So they just lined you up against the wall and said, drop your pants, we're giving you a shot and we're not going to tell you what's in it. And most people accepted that because they thought it was in their best interest. But I'm going to tell you right off the bat, people got concerned about this particular one, and I don't know if it was just that they thought that they could get away with it and their recruitment numbers would stay the same or what the story was, but I mean, after that point, they just looked back and said, okay, well, you said you didn't need us so much that you were going to give us a dishonorable discharge. Well, we don't need you either. So, there is that. He said that number understates the challenge before us as the service has lowered end strength goals in recent years, in particular because of the difficulty recruiting environment. Vazirani said that the all-volunteer force faces one of its greatest challenges since its inception, in the 70s when the draft ceased. Military recruiters say Gen Z, those born between 97 and 2012, generally have a low trust in institutions and have decreasingly followed traditional life and career paths. Which, I mean, that's not the worst thing in the world. They have fewer relatives who served, leading to less inclination to serve. 2 decades ago, 25% of young people had never thought about joining the military, but that figure is now more than 50%. This has led to a disconnect between the military and a large share of society, Vazirani said. Youth of today are not saying no to what the military has to offer, they simply don't know much about military service. That is an advertising line if I ever fucking heard one. Holy shit. While the picture of the current recruiting environment is acutely difficult, the Defense Department and military services are working together to resolve issues, improve processes, and expand awareness of the many opportunities the military services offer. I mean, this is not like, and I'll go back and cite the brainless sitcoms again, this is not like 2.5 Men, where you just have the guy with a big sly smile sitting at the desk saying, hey, you boys like video games? And one of the big selling points when I was that age was, hey, if you join the military, your college will get paid for. Well, these kids, they've had it fed in their head since they were in middle school and before that if they just whine and scream enough, their college is going to get paid for by the government anyway. I actually don't know what incentives the military has for kids right now. But, well, good luck. We're going to talk the Hunter Biden stuff today from the Associated Press. The Republican leading the probe of Hunter Biden has his own shell company and complicated friends. I realize that you think this is a slam dunk because that means that nobody in Congress can investigate anybody else, but it's still wrong when Hunter does it. It's just, okay, we've got to look at everybody else too. And hey, maybe we'll get rid of everybody in the government. And we won't have a government. A guy can dream. From Brian Slodisco. Jim Comer, a multimillionaire farmer, boasts of being one of the largest landholders near his rural Kentucky hometown. And he has meticulously documented nearly all of his land holdings on congressional financial disclosure agreements, roughly 1,600 acres in all. But there are 6 acres that he bought in 2015 and co-owns with a longtime campaign contributor that he's treated differently, transferring his ownership to Farm Team Properties, a shell company he co-owns with his wife. This is what you're stopping the Hunter probe over? The fact that because you're working with somebody outside of your family sphere on land management, that they made an LLC for it. That's the smart thing to do. Interviews and records reviewed by the Associated Press provide new insights into the financial deal, which risks undercutting the force of some of Comer's central arguments in his impeachment inquiry of President Biden. For months, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee and his Republican colleagues have been pounding Biden for how his relatives traded on their famous name to secure business deals. So, again, you've co-bought a relatively small plot of land with a friend and put it into an LLC. Stop the presses. If that was illegal, that would grind most business to a halt. In particular, Comer has attacked some of Biden's family members, including the president's son Hunter, over their use of shell companies that appear designed to obscure millions of dollars in earnings they receive from shadowy middlemen in foreign interests. So who's this other person that Jim owns this land? Like, is this some Chinese national or something like that? Or is it his neighbor? But again, they wanted to put it into an LLC so it doesn't impact either of their finances if something goes down. This is a stretch. Even for the Associated Press, this is a stretch. Such companies typically exist only on paper and are formed to hold an asset like real estate. Their opaque structures are often designed to help hide ownership of property and other assets. Well, you know who it is. Oh, this is a stretch beyond a stretch. This is. But as Comer works to deliver. Oh, let's go off this here. The company used by the Bidens are already playing a central role in the impeachment investigation, which is expected to gain velocity after House Republicans voted Wednesday to formally authorize the probe. The vote follows the federal indictment last week of Biden's son Hunter on charges he engaged in a scheme to avoid paying taxes on his earnings through the companies. Now, he didn't avoid paying taxes. He avoided the money being known about so he could transfer it to his old man. But you're not ready for that conversation. But as Comer works to deliver the transparency and accountability that the American people demand through the GOP's investigation, his own finances and relationships have begun to draw notice too, including ties to prominent local figures who have complicated pasts, not all that dissimilar to some of those caught up in the Biden probe. This is a stretch even for the Associated Press. Holy crap. Hunter trying to play the victim on this one here. The post-millennial. They've displayed naked photos of me during oversight hearing. They've taken the light of my dad's love. Love for Me and presented as darkness. They have no shame. Now, I have been in the same camp of why are we showing naked pictures of Hunter's fat fucking penis? Let's not do that on the House floor. But there again, I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is a plant to discredit the Republican movement that's trying to do this. I think Marjorie Taylor Greene is a Democrat, and I always have from the beginning. I'm kind of glad that she's lost some of the audience that she had before. Let's listen to Hunter play the victim.
They displayed naked photos of me during an oversight hearing. And they have taken the light of my dad's love. The light of my dad's love to me and presented it as darkness. They have no shame. They displayed naked.
Jeez. This is a real world, folks. This is not a parody. More on the Hunter stuff. Actually, I have to archive this one. Actually, I don't. I can just hit the continue without supporting this time. Former FBI spy Hunter sentenced to 4 years for taking money from Putin crony in Russian sanctions case. This is, of course, of Chuck McGonigal. Phil Helsel reporting for NPC News. A former FBI special agent who headed counterintelligence division that was sentenced to more than 4 years in prison on Thursday for supplying information to a Russian oligarch in violation of U.S. sanctions, prosecutors said. Always accuse your enemy of doing what it is that you're doing. Charles McGonigal, now 55, was sentenced to 50 months in prison, the U.S. Attorney's Office for the SDNY said. After he retired from his agency, McGonigal violated the U.S. sanctions when he supplied information to Oleg Deripaska in 2021, officials said. The information McGonigal collected was open source information, he said in a plea agreement. In exchange, McGonigal received $17,500 from Deripaska, laundered from Gazprom Bank in Russia to Cyprus to a business account in Jersey, and then McGonigal's private account, he told the court. Washington was a parody of a parody. What was it? How is it that the Bridget Fetisi says it? When reality becomes a parody, that's a Fetisi? Is that what it is? Counterintelligence is the perfect term for the White House. Yes. Yes, it is. While at the FBI, McGonigal was special agent in charge of a counterintelligence division in New York. He left the agency in 2018. Deripaska, an associate of Russian President Vladimir Putin, who is literally the devil, has a net worth that's been estimated at more than $3 billion US. He was sanctioned by the US in 2018, has been criminally charged in the US for violating the sanctions. McGonigal violated the trust his country placed in him by using a high-level position at the FBI to prepare for his future in business. U.S. Attorney Damian Williams said in a statement, "Just like everybody else who serves in the government, this is not unique to McGonigal. He just got caught." Which, given the fact that he worked in counterintelligence for as long as he did, surprises me a little bit. Not very much, but a little bit. More in the criminal justice news. Federal prosecutor who allegedly interfered in Hunter probe leaves the DOJ. From Josh Christensen and Stephen Nelson. A federal prosecutor who allegedly interfered in the criminal investigation of Hunter Biden to protect both President and his son recently left the DOJ, the Post has learned. Former Delaware Assistant U.S. Attorney Leslie Wolf's quiet departure emerged as she appeared for deposition with the House Judiciary Committee on Thursday morning following the Wednesday night House vote to formally authorize the impeachment inquiry. Wolf's starring role in the alleged cover-up of the criminal tax fraud and foreign lobbying investigation is a significant part of the impeachment inquiry, while with the I'm gonna talk like Biden, man, with whistleblowers saying that she got discouraged, asking witnesses questions about the big guy or dad, referring to Biden, claiming there was no specific criminality to that line of questioning. Surprise, surprise. Another person protecting Biden has left the office. That one might be too far for YouTube and Twitch. I get where you're coming from on that one, but that one might be a step too far. And I don't think he's getting it, or she's getting it from Santa. I think that person is getting it from the Biden admin. Medical marijuana news is on the front page today. Federal agency quashes Georgia's plan to let pharmacies sell medical marijuana. Imagine that. The DEA is stepping in on legal weed. From the Associated Press. Federal drug officials are warning Georgia to shelve its plans to be the first state to allow pharmacies to dispense medical marijuana products. News outlet reports that the U.S. Drug Enforcement Agency on November 27th warned pharmacies that dispensing medical marijuana violates federal law. Yeah, just so you know, every instance of possession of marijuana and distribution of marijuana violates federal law. Yes, even in Colorado. It's just that they don't enforce it. The Georgia Board of Pharmacy began accepting applications to dispense the products in October. Licenses have already been issued to 23 Georgia independent pharmacies, the board said. The Georgia Access to Medical Cannabis Commission, which oversees Georgia's fledgling medical marijuana industry, says it cannot override the federal directive, even though pharmacies are allowed to dispense the products under state law. Andrew Turnage, the commission's executive director, told the Atlanta Journal-Constitution that the state would love to see pharmacists be allowed to continue providing consultations for medical cannabis products as they do with other medication. In a memo to pharmacies, the DEA said that none of them can lawfully possess, handle, or dispense marijuana or related products containing more than 0.3% tetrahydrocannabinol, the psychoactive chemical known as THC that gives users a high. Well, right, and again, that's true, but that's the same for everybody. In Colorado, it's against federal law for you to handle or dispense marijuana or related products containing more than 0.3% tetrahydrocannabinol. But because it's been decriminalized on a state level in Colorado, they just do it and don't let the federal government come in and interfere with them. But trust me, if Colorado started going against federal wishes and federal whims and other things, then suddenly all those dispensaries in Colorado would start getting a visit. Just so you know. Same with California. If California ever stopped supporting the federal government and everything that they do and said, fuck that, we don't want to play with you anymore, the DEA and the FBI would start raiding every single dispensary in the state of California. Mogwai says, MTG is protecting us from the devil's lettuce through the DEA. And how can you get a Rocky Mountain High in Colorado without it? Well, I think the Coors has something to do with that. And shortly after that, Town Hall reports, Biden's job approval finds a new low before the new year. From Spencer Brown. Just how low can President Biden's job approval rating go? According to Pew Research's tracking of Americans' approval of the president, the floor has yet to be found, as his latest survey pins approval at just 33%, a 5-point slide from the beginning of 2023 and 21 points lower than when he first took office. Well, when he first took office, keep in mind that literally he could come in and tell all Americans that they suck and that he was going to put the iron fist down, and they would still approve of him because he was an evil orange man. That leaves nearly 2/3 of Americans, 64%, disapproving of Biden's performance as the president. Now, it looks like they are doing a track on this one here, but I don't know if this is a single poll or not, so we're actually going to go over to our good friends over at Real Clear Politics and look at what the aggregate is. Because I only do aggregates here. It's sometimes fun to talk about a single poll, but we work on averages and aggregates here. So they're saying on Town Hall mid-30s. Approval at 33%. That's from, I'm guessing, a recent poll. When we take this to the aggregate, we do find a 15-point spread, and we'll go look at the track too. And I'm going to say that it's like the spread is not the worst that it's been right now. It has tightened up a little bit since July 19th of, I'm sorry, I'll go July 23rd of 2022. That was when Biden was at his greatest spread. He's approaching it again, by the way. He's getting close, especially if you look at where the tracker is at the bottom there. That shows where the difference is. He's not there yet, but he's close. So while this was probably a single poll, a couple polls it looks like, we've got Quinnipiac and Yahoo News, 38 and 37% respectively, and a CNBC, which is 1,002 adults. We can maybe push that one out a little bit because that's, we don't know if these are even people who are legally eligible to vote. But if we even leave it in for the aggregate, we still see a 40.6% approval rating on the aggregate. Which is still not good, by the way, because 55.6% disapprove by the aggregate. And he can't crack 60, at least recently, this month. So that is where Biden may actually be at. But still, I mean, again, interesting to look and see what the single polls are and how they shape the average. Even among members of his own party, their opinion of Biden's job performance has been sliding through 2023, as Pew noted, of partisan, racial, and other demographics. Well, again, we can see the chart. This is where 2023 starts. And he did get a little bit of a boom in February, but it's been on a fairly, significant downfall since then. So I'm going to rate the Town Hall article as half true. Meanwhile, Trump, coming from the Hill, takes a significant polling lead over Biden in the presidential race. Brett Samuels reporting. Recent polls show former President Trump leading Biden in key swing states that will likely decide the 2024 election, indicating Trump is not just the overwhelming favorite to secure the nomination, but is in a strong position to recapture the White House less than a year before Election Day. Trump leads Biden in hypothetical matchups with and without third-party options on the ballot in states including Georgia, Michigan, Nevada, Arizona, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. What do we know about those 6 states? Those are the 6 states that were in question on honk honk the night that totally nothing bad happened. And of course, it was wrong for them to be in question because honk honk, most popular president in history, more popular than even Barack Obama. The numbers underscore that there is work for Biden to do, even as experts and strategists agree. Plenty can change in the roughly 10 months until the election. I think it illustrates where we are at in both the former president and the current president's trajectory heading into November 2024, Nick Traynor, a former Trump campaign official, said on the Yes Labels podcast. A CNN poll released this week showed Trump leading Biden by 5 percentage points in Georgia, a state Biden carried in 2020 by roughly 12,000 votes, honk honk. The poll also found Trump leading Biden by 10 points in Michigan, where Biden won by at least 155,000 votes in 2020. The poll found majorities in both states, 54% in Georgia and 56% in Michigan, believe Biden's policies have worsened economic conditions as Biden struggles to sell what aides believe is a strong economy to voters. But nobody who buys gas and groceries believes that. A Bloomberg News Morning Consult poll released this week had similarly sour results for Biden. Well, let's go back a page here and see what we have here. National, Trump over DeSantis. General election, Trump 46.8 to Biden 44.5. DeSantis is up by 0.2 and Haley up by 4.9 over Biden. With the RCP betting averages showing Trump at 37.8 versus Biden of 29.7. So none of this is good news. Let's see what we can find here for the actual let's do this one here. See where the recent polls are. Iowa caucus says Trump plus 34. Yahoo News, Trump versus Biden is 44-44 with a tie. But we can look at the aggregate for this one. The aggregate says plus 2.3 for this, with a little bit of a scatter shot here, but mostly in red over this one. And watching the plot go between the two of them since November 13th of 2022, that's also been all over the place, with the margin just increasing as we go. So a lot to see. We'll see what happens with it. But on the other side of this, and important for this one, is this is an op-ed from Newsweek, even though it doesn't say op-ed on it. It says essay. But we've got a conservative Republican viewpoint. This is pre-Colorado. Why Trump should drop out now, a conservative Republican viewpoint. I'm going to read a little bit of this one here, and we'll talk about it. Wayne Grudem, writing this op-ed. I voted for Trump twice. I published several op-ed pieces defending him and his policies. I spoke in support of Trump on podcasts and before live audiences. I do not regret those decisions, and I remain convinced that given the alternative, Hillary and Biden, supporting Trump in 2016 and 20 was the right choice. I also think Trump accomplished a remarkable number of good things for America. He placed 3 outstanding justices on the Supreme Court, slashed taxes, canceled thousands of government-imposed regulations, and these 2 actions spurred vigorous economic growth while bringing inflation down to just over 2% a year. It was under 2% for a while. He reduced illegal immigration. Trump built 200 miles of effective border walls. If construction had been blocked repeatedly by judges in a Democratic Congress and a Republican Congress, by the way, that refused to appropriate money for a wall, he'd have had a lot more. Abraham Accords, energy policy. I mean, he goes on to some good things. Democrats oppose those accomplishments. But why Trump should drop out now? Why then should Trump drop out of the current presidential race? Because he is a weaker candidate than in 2016. In fact, Frank Luntz recently called Trump the weakest Republican candidate for the general, while Trump remains popular among conservative Republicans. His support among independents is abysmal, and independents will decide the general election. The latest Gallup poll showed a remarkable decline in party loyalty for both parties. 28% of Americans now consider themselves Republican. 24% now consider themselves Democrats, with a whopping 46% say they're independents. A candidate will have to win the majority of independents in order to win the election. That's where Trump comes up short. A New York Times Siena College poll of over 3,600 registered voters in 6 battleground states in October found that 57% of respondents had an unfavorable view of President Biden, a highly unpopular president. But 56%, almost an identical number, held an unfavorable view of Trump. Voters don't like either of these candidates, and among voters who are undecided and persuadable, only 20% think it would be good for the country if Trump became president again, and 54% believe that Trump has committed serious federal crimes. Honk honk. If those numbers are anywhere near the actual situation, it will be impossible for Trump to win the general election. Look, here is the reality. The independents on the Democrat side are going to vote Democrat no matter what, because when it comes down to it, they think that any Republican interference is going to get in the way of their progressive utopia, and they think that they can control the Democrat Party. So, first off, the ones who call themselves independents on the left are Democrats. That is plain and simple number one. Where did my music go? Did they get knocked off or did I get knocked off? I don't know, that stopped. But we'll continue talking about this while I figure out what's happening with that. Oh, there it came back. But on the right side of the spectrum, I don't want to say the Republican Party, you hold a lot more of the former Democrats than the Independent Progressive Caucus does. The reason I'm bringing that up is because a lot of MAGA supporters don't consider themselves to be Republicans either. I'm not a MAGA supporter anymore. I used to be, but I'm not anymore. I don't consider myself a Republican. I tend to caucus with them a little bit more. And while I would not vote for anybody currently running as the presidency, I don't argue the fact that my life was better under the Trump presidency than it has been in my entire adult life. Going all the way back to when Bush was the president. Because Bush was the president when I turned 18. My life was never as good as it was. From 2018 on until the COVID hit. And even once that hit too, I was still flying pretty high for the majority of it. But these MAGA people don't consider themselves to be Republicans, especially when they look at people like Nikki Haley and Ron DeSantis, who were the people that they were avoiding when they were Democrats. I remind you, and I've pointed this out over numerous occasions, the vast majority of the MAGA coalition that Ron DeSantis needs to win were Union Democrats who were displaced when Barack Obama said, "Oh, those jobs? Oh, they're never coming back. Nobody's got a magic wand. Those jobs are never coming back. Sorry." You gotta get a new job. You gotta learn to do something else. Because those jobs are done. We don't do that anymore here. Be a banker. Be a programmer. You don't need that other job. It's gone. We don't need that kind of stuff here. Pollutes. Millennials that support me. They don't want pollution. Your job pollutes. It's a global crisis. How much it pollutes? So we're going to move it to India, where they have no regulations. That is where MAGA came from. Was that statement from President Obama, who promised the moon on the stick to the Union coalition of the Democrat Party, and then said, hey, thanks for voting for me. Sorry. Couldn't do more for you. Times are changing. You gotta change too. So of course, once we have more the Paul Ryan, the Bushite, the Nikki Haley's, the Ron DeSantis's, although they're still trying to sell Ron DeSantis as Trump without the baggage. As more of those people start to get in and try to push the movement back to the evangelocon side, no, of course these people don't want to consider themselves to be Republican. Of course not. I wouldn't. I flirted with it briefly at the end of Obama and the beginning of Trump, and I'm like, no, I'm not like this. I'm not an evangelocon war pig like the people that want Trump to be an evangelocon war pig. So again, I still say let the people decide. And a big reminder, once again, to those of you in the DeSantis camp, you need these people to win. So maybe you should stop insulting them on Twitter or X, whichever you prefer. Now that we've been completely sidetracked for this, and Goats and Scarves says maybe that's what they should do for all the Colorado ballot nonsense. What, go raid them? Raid the dispensaries? Yeah, but the Biden DOJ isn't going to do that. On the DeSantis news side, Ron DeSantis' super PAC loses another top strategist. This dude is done. And again, my reservations for him aside, Ron DeSantis, if he would have waited until 2028 and came out and said, hey, I think what they're doing at the Mar-a-Lago is wrong with the documents case, and I'm going to block the federal extradition of this. So I'm going to block the agents from coming in here. And I support Donald Trump through this whole thing, and he has my support coming into the 2024 election. If he'd have done that, he would have coasted. Even if honk honk happened again in 2024. Ron DeSantis would have coasted to re-election in 28, or not re-election, but election in 2028. He wouldn't have even had to put an effort forward in 28. But the more he tries to do in 2024, the more he tries to out-Trump Trump, and Governor Walker found this out the hard way. When you try to out-Trump Trump, which is what DeSantis has been doing his entire campaign, you lose. When you try to be Trump without the baggage, which is exactly what Scott Walker tried to run as, you lose. But Jeff Rowe is out from Jonathan Allen and Amanda Turkle. The uneasy relationship between Florida Man and the key strategist at his deep-pocketed super PAC came to an end on Saturday night. I cannot in good conscience stay affiliated with the Never Back Down. Given the statements in the Washington Post today, the strategist Jeff Rowe said in a statement posted to X, "They're not true and an unwanted distraction at a critical time for Governor DeSantis." His decision was first reported by the Washington Post, which published an extensive story on the long-running tensions between DeSantis and the super PAC earlier in the day. Rowe has delivered stunning victories in the past, but this doesn't seem to be his time. Dan Eberhardt said Governor DeSantis wants to head into the final stretch with his loyalists, not necessarily nationally known operatives with presidential campaign experience per se. The writing had been on the wall for some time as people close to DeSantis took more control of the super PAC in recent weeks and dismissed several of Roe's lieutenants. In the past month or so, Never Back Down had 3 CEOs, including Roe. 4 top officials have resigned, and 3 others, according to the Washington Post, were fired. Look, this does not scream successful campaign. This screams to me, oh, the political wind is going that way. Okay, hey, I have Jeff Rowe and these top-rated people in here. They'll totally push me to victory. Oh, hey, the politics say that I should support 6-week abortion because that was popular in my state. Hey, let's push through this as hard as we can. Ron is toast. I mean, again, going back to my inhibitions with him, I still say he would have coasted to victory in 28. And he would have done it without my vote, too. Because every MAGA person would have come in. If he just said, I support Donald Trump at this, every MAGA person would have been at his back immediately. But again, he tried to play the outside. He tried to beat Trump with Israel as his vice president and Jesus running his campaign, which does not speak to that coalition of voters that came from over on the Union Worker Democrat side. The Mogwai says, the only question for DeSantis is, will Rose let him on the door of the Titanic? Probably not. Alright, let's do a little bit more foreign stuff here, shall we? We still got a little bit of things to do here, but we're running down on it real quick. So in Iceland, if you know somebody in Iceland, you should maybe go check on them. The Iceland volcano erupts after weeks of increased seismic activity. Greg Wenner reporting. A volcano in the southwestern portion of Iceland erupted on Monday after weeks of increased and intense seismic activity, according to the Icelandic Meteorological Office. In a post on X, the Icelandic Met Office said the eruption started around 10:17 p.m. local time after an earthquake swarm that began an hour and 15 minutes prior. The volcano is located about 3 kilometers north of the fishing town of Grindavik, which has a population of less than 4,000 people. And there's the lava flow. Reuters reported that authorities evacuated the inhabitants of Grindavik and closed the nearby Blue Lagoon geothermal spa out of fear of a significant outbreak on the Reykjanes Peninsula. The Met Office said the Coast Guard helicopter would be taking off to confirm the exact location and size of the eruption, adding that more information would be provided as soon as it becomes available. So, it looks like everybody's safe. Looks like they got everybody out in time. There are not any reports thus far of any casualties that I've seen off of this. But we can also watch the video.
First, an earthquake, and now a volcanic eruption is underway in southwest Iceland. Look at these visuals. Hot lava and smoke spewing into the air. It is not unexpected after several weeks of seismic activity in the area. The eruption is less than 2 miles from the town of Grindavik, which was already evacuated. And according to Icelandic authorities, cracks in the ground now stretch toward the town. The nearby Blue Lagoon geothermal spa, popular with tourists, was also shut down weeks ago.
Police say a gunman opened fire at a university in downtown Prague, killing at least 14.
All right, so short video of that. We got to see some of the cool bits of lava. Now, yes, I understand homes are going to be destroyed. People are going to have to rebuild, but we've got new land coming off this too. And again, things can be replaced. I know that there are family heirlooms that sometimes cannot, but I mean, things can be replaced. People cannot. So I'm very, very glad that they got everybody out of there. Everybody was safe. What else do we have? The farm protest in Berlin. I have a couple things to say about this one. Oh, we need volume. By the way, that is manure that they're spreading on the roadway. This is in Berlin, in Germany. They're spreading shit on the road. Literally. Now this almost landed in things I like and things that I hate as things that I hate. Because we've got here Alex 1, aka Sucka Free, and just having that screen name should be enough for this for me to hate this person. That is so cringe, I almost died of cringe here. But it says, same thing as protesters blocking traffic, or is it different because you like them more? And unfortunately, there are a lot of people in the comments that just said, oh yeah, no, it's because we like them more. Look, I was pragmatic about this. I was very pragmatic about this. I am an unfettered capitalist, which means that I think that blocking the flow of goods, services, and commerce is an asshole move. Furthermore, emergency vehicles still use these roads. Ambulances, fire trucks. Which means that somebody desperate to get to the hospital may be blocked at some point like this and may die in the ambulance on the way. I don't like that. But there is a delicious irony. An absolute delicious irony to people like Alex 1, Sucka Free, who screech over the fact that these people are playing by the same rules that his people put forward. Oh, by the way, it's acid drop when I'm rapping. In case you needed more cringe about this one. What are they protesting? Reuters reports. German farmers protest with tractors against austerity measures. Hundreds of German farmers and their tractors gathered in central Berlin on Monday to protest against the government's plan to cut diesel subsidies and tax breaks for agricultural vehicles next year as part of Berlin's 2024 austerity measures. After a constitutional court ruling last month that canceled 60 billion euros of earmarked debt, the federal government last week announced plans to save around 900 million euros, or just short of $1 billion annually in subsidies for farmers. Why is the dollar stronger than the euro right now? No, I'm sorry, I have that opposite. Because if there are more, it's weaker. Okay, the euro is stronger than the dollar right now. According to next year's budget, a partial tax refund on agricultural diesel, along with a tax exemption for agricultural vehicles, will be abolished to meet the savings measures. A measure, farmers said, would threaten the livelihood and competitiveness of Germany's agricultural sector. Farmers protested the planned cuts at Brandenburg Gate, carrying placards reading, "Your politics are a declaration of war against farmers. And too much is too much. It's over now." Parking a number of tractors along Berlin's Strasse des 17, Juni Boulevard in central Berlin. Germany's DBV and LSV farmers' lobbies called for the protests last week, and on Monday threatened to organize further countrywide demonstrations if the measures were implemented. Then from January 8th, we will be present everywhere in a way that the country's never experienced before. We will not accept this, DBV President Joachim Ruckwied said. Now again, I have to stand against this on principle, both for the blocking of commerce and the blocking especially of emergency vehicles. But climate activists, these are the rules you set forward. So you don't get to say anything about them. I do. Because I stood against it when you did it too, for the same reason. But you don't get to say jack shit about this. And I hope you're happy with it. Discord is in the news. Just gonna go a quick over the top here and see what it is that we are gonna be leaving in and what we're gonna be dropping out of here. Because I do have to make some choices here. Let's do this one and let's lightning around the rest of it, because we can, it's short enough news that we can lightning around the rest of it here. And then we'll do things I like and things that I hate. I'll skip rules of acquisition. We'll wait till Tuesday for that one. But I'll finish out the things that I like and things that I hate. Discord tips off FBI to 13-year-old synagogue mass shooting plot. Just remember that, by the way, when you're chiding our friend Midget B in and trying to get him to say crazier shit. And I will be keeping that in mind too, by the way, to try to see if I can keep from chiding him to do so. What he does in his own server, I cannot control. What he does in mine, I will be paying a bit of attention to. And again, this is a part of the reason that I performed a Spartanectomy in my server. Because he was over the line of calls to action on numerous occasions, where Midget B, when the thought was brought up of calls to action, did point out the fact that we just can't go running out and going to action for things. Although, with Spartan, I think if I would have just come in and said, oh yeah, no, you're totally right. Hey, I don't know if I can do this because I can't afford the Daniel Defense Rifle, and I might not pass the background check. Can you make that stuff go away for me? You'll buy the Daniel Defense Rifle for me? I got a feeling that's what I think that dude was a Fed. I still do to this day. But they are watching in that platform. Brian Hartman, Danielle Jennings, and Quinn Owen reporting. A 13-year-old boy from Ohio has been charged in connection with a plot to commit a mass shooting in a synagogue in September, after he allegedly made detailed threats on Discord, a messaging platform popular among gamers, according to court documents. Yeah, how many of that was an FBI agent egging him on? Remember, the Uvalde shooter and the Buffalo shooter were both in the same Discord server with a retired FBI agent. Mogwai says, smoke on the water, fire in the sky. Oh, and in the manure story, where's Biff to run on the pile of shit? I don't remember if I put the meme in my Discord or not, but I actually have a meme of Biff in the diner saying, what are you looking at, butthead? And somebody photoshopped Butthead from Beavis and Butthead's face onto Marty's body. And I laughed hysterically when I saw it the first time. The individual, who was only identified by the initials JR in a criminal complaint due to his age, has been charged in Stark County Juvenile Court with inducing panic and disorderly conduct, according to charging documents. Discord's counter-extremism analyst proactively detected, removed, and reported this user to FBI's National Threat of Operations Center, which, by the way, they have a file on me. I know they do. A couple of them are probably watching this right now. Hi, Dave. Which is what led to the user's arrest. We have zero tolerance policy against hate and violent extremism, which means that they've never seen my server, or the Porch Boys server for that matter. And when we see it, we take immediate action. It's a top priority for Discord to ensure a safe experience for our users. John Redgrave, Discord's Vice President of Trust and Safety, said in a statement to ABC News. The Mogwai is fed and tries to be fed every night, which is probably important because, if I remember correctly, you cannot be fed after midnight. Is that correct? All right. Let's lightning round through the rest of these. A short one here, a hot find. Customs officers in California seized $10 million worth of meth and cocaine hidden in jalapeno paste. Can you imagine how painful that would be to snort that? I can't even begin to imagine. I've never used meth, so I don't know how you take it. I've done coke once. And it burned just being regular coke. Can you imagine that being stored with jalapeno paste? Oh, that's painful thinking about. Oh, man. I feel sorry for who was supposed to be buying this. Goats and Scarves says meth is smoked. I didn't know if it was smoked or ingested. Closest I've ever been to meth is the one troublemaker in my small town. Once came up with a bag of crystal meth, which is why I thought that it was ingested. Oh, man. A 28-year-old man caught some heat with the U.S. Customs and Border Protection in Southern California after officers say they found thousands of pounds of narcotics hidden in jalapeno paste shipment. This was at Otay Mesa. Encountered a driver in a commercial tractor trailer on Wednesday carrying a shipment declared as jalapeno paste. The vehicle shipment and the driver, who officials said held a valid border crossing card, were referred for additional examination. And then they found the coke. I still can't imagine. Coke hidden in jalapeno paste. Man, do I feel sorry for the person who would have been intent to snort that after the fact. No, I don't have the address. It's somewhere in western or eastern California. That's all I know. Jalapeno cocaine. That's terrible. Do you have the address? Says the Mogwai. In Illinois news, the Supreme Court refuses to block an Illinois law banning some high-power semi-automatic weapons. No author given. The Supreme Court on Thursday declined to put on hold a new Illinois law that would ban high-powered semi-automatics, like the ones used in mass killing of 7 people at a 2022 parade in a Chicago suburb. The justices did not comment on refusing an emergency appeal from a gun rights group and others, even though this clearly violates Dobbs. The law prohibits the possession, manufacture, or sale of semi-automatic rifles and high-capacity magazines. It takes effect January 1st. At least 8 other states and D.C. have some sort of prohibition on semi-automatic weapons. In several cases, challenging those laws are making their way through the federal courts, relying at least in part on the Supreme Court's decision in 2022 that expanded gun rights. So, why I think this is happening, this was, by the way, this led to some black pills in the Discord. Some major black pills in the Discord. I wouldn't completely black pill on this one just yet, because with several other cases coming from several other states, this sounds like they're gathering and they're going to do one major hearing and get it all done at once. And I still think that they're going to find in the favor of the gun rights groups. We're having a conversation about meth. Goats and Scarves says, Google says it can also be injected or ingested. So that's why Mexican food is so addicting. I could go for some tacos right now. In a completely unrelated note, I did have Taco Bell for breakfast today because I had some quiche that I had pre-made for breakfast, but I forgot it on my way to work today. So I got to work and I just ordered some Taco Bell from DoorDash. And it was delicious. And then I had a bunch of barbecue for dinner, and I wonder why I'm not hungry right now. Fetterman news. John Fetterman announces he's not the progressive that he pretended to be, writes Ellie Hotel in the New Republic. But we're going to read this from NPC News. Sahil Kapoor. John Fetterman is breaking with progressives on hot-button issues with his fiery support for Israel and calls for Democrats to engage in tougher immigration laws, disappointing some on the left as he shows an independent streak. He's also continually scolding Democrats for not pushing Bob Menendez out of office after he was indicted on federal charges of taking bribes and acting as a foreign agent for Egypt, which the New Jersey Democrat denies. In 22, Fetterman's ties with Bernie Sanders prompted GOP opponent Mehmet Oz to tell voters he'd be a mere sidekick for the Democratic Socialist. But Fetterman's recent stances point to an unorthodox brand of blue-collar liberalism, with a dash of outsider populism in a purple state that's expected to be hotly contested again in the 2024 elections. I don't know where he goes with this, honestly. There are a couple different ways that this can go. Number one, this could actually be a push to try to pull back some of MAGA, who, as I pointed out earlier, are mostly blue-collar Democrats who were disenfranchised by the progressive agendas of Barack Obama and the handlers of Joe Biden, along with Hillary Clinton. This could be an act because, yes, Pennsylvania is admittedly very, very purple. Or this could be that he has no idea what's going on because of his stroke, and his handlers looked up and said, hey, the progressive movement is starting to become unpopular. Let's go find and do something else. I don't know where this goes. Fetterman has said some things that I liked in recent times. I still have an air of caution with him because he is still a gun grabber. That's usually my line in the sand for politicians. That's why I don't support Tulsi Gabbard, as much as my libertarian friends tell me I have to. But he's going to be one to watch in the next 6 years, and we'll see what happens with that. Can you imagine muling jalapeno Coke? Oh. So now we have dinos. We always have. Dinos on jalapeno cocaine move over Coke Bear. All right. Anheuser-Busch is going on strike. Briefly on this one, Teamsters authorized February strike at Anheuser-Busch. When we have a pro-union, quote, president, why do all these companies suddenly start going on strike, I wonder? Chris Isidore and Jordan Valinsky reporting. About 5,000 Teamsters working for Anheuser-Busch voted overwhelmingly to authorize a strike if a new contract cannot be reached before the current one expires on February 29th. The union members who work at the 12 U.S. breweries represent more than a quarter of Anheuser-Busch's U.S. workforce. Our members' labor, talent, and sacrifice are what put Anheuser-Busch products on the shelf, and we are committed to getting a contract that rewards and recognizes their hard work, said Teamsters President Sean O'Brien. If Anheuser-Busch's executives can't get their act together to negotiate an agreement that respects workers, we will see them out on the streets. So, we get the trains, we get the automakers, and now we get the Teamsters for Anheuser-Busch. Where this is going to fall in the popular position, I actually cannot answer right now. Because remember, they're also slumping, and I don't think Anheuser-Busch has the numbers to get them the wages that they want. But we've got 2 months to figure this one out, so we'll see what happens with that. The Bud strike drags on. Could be a Pride Month headline, says the Mogwai. Another one from CNN. Southwest getting the fine from last year on their holiday meltdown. Southwest hit by a record $140 million fine for the holiday service meltdown in 2022. That was right after I moved, by the way. I don't remember if I covered that or not because that might have been in the 2 weeks I was moving, if I remember correctly. Pete Montien and Chris Isidore. The federal government is fining Southwest $140 million for last year's historic 10-day-long holiday meltdown that stranded more than 2 million travelers. The Department of Transportation's announcement of its largest ever civil penalty comes after a year of cascading issues at Southwest led to the cancellation of nearly 17,000 flights. Those flights made up nearly half of Southwest's flight schedule during the busy holiday travel period. The agency says it levied the fine for numerous violations of consumer protection laws during and after the operational failures, including not communicating with passengers, failing to provide adequate customer service, and not refunding passengers quickly enough. Southwest said it was pleased to reach the settlement with the DOT and that it's committed to delivering the highest quality of customer service. It said the agreement includes a new industry-leading policy to compensate customers during significant delays and cancellations. That is such a canned fucking response, I can't even believe it. And I like Southwest. But that response right there has HR written all over it. Things happen. I understand that. And you as a business have to try to compensate. Otherwise, people are going to go back out to your competition. But all this is going to do is make tickets more expensive. Let's be realistic here. A couple more. I want to skip that one because that one I need to take some more time on this. The Pope. Actually, I'm going to skip this too because this one has moved so many times. I don't actually know where this lands. The AP is saying the Pope approves blessings for same-sex couples that must not resemble marriage. Whereas my one friend who is Catholic has said that this doesn't actually exist. I need to research this one more before we put this one on. We're going to hold off on that one. And the last one. We've got one more war front that may be popping off in a bit. Colombia's leftist ELN rebels agree to stop kidnapping for ransom. Congratulations. Rebels from Colombia's leftist National Liberation Army said Sunday they have agreed to stop using kidnapping as a fundraising tactic if the current ceasefire with the government is extended. The pledge came at the end of a round of talks between the two sides over the weekend in Mexico City. Colombians have grown angry at kidnappings by the guerrillas, known by their Spanish initials as the ELN. That anger mounted in October when the rebels abducted the father of soccer star Luis Diaz and held him for 12 days before he was released. Diaz's mother was rescued within hours by police. It's not clear if the rebels will release the estimated 38 Colombians they currently hold in captivity, often pending a ransom demand, nor was it clear if the pledge would be respected if the ceasefire, declared in August and due to expire in January, is not extended. This is where we're at, folks. Hey, we promise we'll fundraise another way. We're not going to kidnap anymore. Alright, that's all that I have. Let's do a thing that I like and a couple things that I hate. A few things that I hate. Alright, the thing that I like today. Twitch U-turns on artistic nudity policies. Now this was funny. Because one of my friends in a Discord server actually had pointed out the fact that, because as I stream on Twitch, said, hey, I can stream topless on Twitch. I promise you that's not going to happen, by the way. I've done it once. I got dared. Rob with a generational gap, when the generational gap was still a thing, didn't think that I would be shirtless on a stream. And I did it. He didn't even have to pay me for it. He said, I will pay you X amount of dollars. I said, screw that, I'll do it for free. And then I went over and got my leather jacket and sat there in just a leather jacket and did the rest of the interview on the generational gap. But earlier on, Twitch had made a statement saying that, and let's be realistic about Twitch. what you're seeing right now is the minority. A guy who generally respects the video games and wants to play them for people, and who uses the platform as another dissemination for the news. That's the minority on Twitch. The majority of Twitch's income comes from pretty girls who go to different levels and get a lot of people to donate to them. Now, I try to avoid the ones that are excessive about it. But, I mean, in typical, I prefer girls who are a bit more modest anyway. I always have. I like short skirts, but for the most part, that's not what I go in for Twitch streaming for. That's my stance on it, but Twitch figured out that there are a lot of people who would empty their wallets a lot more if some of the more lewd creators that they have on the platform were allowed to get even more lewd. Basically turn it into another form of OnlyFans. But they realized in a hot second that it would basically destroy any other form of income that they have with the platform, and they backed out on it. Streaming platform Twitch has been forced to abandon a loosening of its policy on sexual content because it led to a flood of AI-generated nudity. And they didn't even do it because of the fact that it was going to disproportionately affect one level of user and shut everybody else out in the cold. It was because of AI. It was announced on Wednesday that more adult content was to be allowed as long as it was deemed artistic. Love to know who's making the judgment on that. That prompted a torrent of digitally generated nudes, and by Friday the firm announced a U-turn. Sully, 12301, are you a new chatter? I don't know. The bot took the icon out, so I can tell if that was a new chatter or not. Oh, that's right. I do recognize your name now. You're from the Cat Pan stream. Welcome. Thank you. And by the way, as long as we're over here on the other side, I also get to say a thank you to Mogwai, who, now that I can see the activity feed, has resubbed for a month at Tier 1. They've been subscribed for 8 months. Thank you, the Mogwai. I just got a payout from Twitch, too, not that long ago. Which I don't put that in my general checking account. That's in my savings account, because everything that you guys donate to me, by the way, goes into the house fund. I don't use that for my general day-to-day stuff, but you're helping me buy a house, so thank you for that. Anyway, back to Twitch. After we went and reviewed Twitch, now we're back to Twitch. Upon reflection, we've decided we went too far with this change, Dan Clancy said in a statement. He said that some of the imagery had been allowed under the new guidelines. Oh, by the way, for Sully, the reason that I didn't realize that it had been deleted over here, because this is what I see on my side, because I'm multi-streaming. So I didn't see that this had been deleted. But yeah, I saw it over there. Moving forward, depictions of real or fictional nudity won't be allowed on Twitch, which is going to be a challenge for some of the games that they do allow on there, by the way. Regardless of the medium, he added, if I remember correctly, there is some nudity in New Vegas. I'd have to go back and play again. Last week, Twitch, which is owned by Amazon, issued a lengthy sexual content policy update to allow previously banned content, including deliberately highlighted breast, buttocks, or pelvic region, fictionalized, fully exposed female-presenting breasts and genitals or buttocks, regardless of gender, which again is going to make New Vegas a challenge, body writing on female-presenting breasts and buttocks, regardless of gender, erotic dances that involve disrobing or disrobing gestures such as strip teases, which is going to make New Vegas difficult. The issue that I have with this, and I do like this, it does keep the playing field somewhat level for the rest of us, but the issue that I do have with this is there's a lot of content, game content, not just the creators themselves, but there's a lot of game content that violates this, that just they don't even look at. So Yeah, we had a certain group in here when I first started off on Twitch, and they would spam caps and emotes and everything else, so I did add that to the Nightbot, was emotes. So you can't do caps, you can't do emotes. I could probably relax a lot of that now, just because of the fact that those people don't come around anymore. But I haven't actually gone in and fiddled with the Nightbot to change that. Yeah, the Mogwai says right off the bat, the new GTA is going to be tough to stream. So that's where Twitch is on that. Let's do a few things that I hate. And we go right back into the political. This one. 1 in 5 mail-in voters admit they cheated in the 2020 election. I don't know how far I can go. Well, okay, let me rephrase that. I know how far I can go with this on YouTube now. But one of the things I'm going to pay attention to is the fact that YouTube will go back and retroactively take down videos and give you strikes over stuff that wasn't. It was perfectly acceptable in their rules to do at the time, but if they change the rules, they'll go back and retro apply them to videos at the time. I know a lot of YouTube creators are not going by that, like Tim Pool and Sticks come out and say, oh yeah, no, election 2020 was, and I'm not going to say this on YouTube again. And these people have been on YouTube for a lot longer than I have and know that YouTube retroactively applies the rules. They know full well that they do that. More than 20% of voters who used mail-in ballots in 20 admitted they participated in at least one form of election, can't say that word. A new telephone and online survey by Rasmussen and the Heartland Institute found that 21% of likely U.S. voters who voted by absentee or mail-in in the 20 election say they filled out a ballot in part or full on behalf of a friend or family member, which is against the law, by the way, such as a spouse or a child, while 78% say they didn't. Yeah. Sunny Hostin literally said it on The View that she did. 30% of those surveyed said they voted by absentee or mail ballot in the 2020 election. 19% of those who cast mail ballots say a friend or family member filled out their ballot in part or full on their behalf. Furthermore, 78% of mail voters say that in the 2020 election, they cast a ballot in a state where they were no longer a permanent resident. And the only reason that I hate this, because again, I say the same thing when we hear, oh, well, we found all this evidence of this in Arizona and all this evidence of this in Pennsylvania. Yeah, well, when Biden put his hand on the Bible and said, I promised to uphold the thing, man. You can find evidence of this in all 50 states and you can't change anything about it. So I'm glad that you guys found this. Hopefully that some states can make policy that addresses this in the future. But I was also told that this is impossible, that this could never happen. And you're a conspiracy theory if you bring it up. And now we've got 20% of people admit to the fact that it happened. So that's where we are at with that. A couple more things that I hate. John Kerry. Envoy Kerry launches international nuclear fusion plan at COP28. Valerie Voltovici reporting. U.S. Special Climate Envoy John Kerry on Tuesday launched an international engagement plan to boost nuclear fusion, saying the emissions-free technology could become a vital tool in fighting against climate change. Kerry said the plan involved 35 nations and would focus on research and development, supply chain issues, regulation, and safety. There's a potential in fusion to revolutionize our world, Kerry told the COP28 Climate Summit in Dubai. I love the idea of us finding a way to go back and use fusion. I do. I think it's amazing. I think we need to do more of this. Especially because if we can figure out how to harness the temperature of fusion, which is massive, then we work with a lot more stable outcomes of it. Because fusion typically uses hydrogen with a result of helium instead of heavier metals from down the lanthanide series with unstable isotopes that come off of the reaction of fission. Fission's easier to achieve and easier to control the amount of temperature because it's much, much lower than what fusion is. But again, I put this in things that I hate because people have been calling on this for years. There is enough hydrogen in the atmosphere to give us nearly limitless energy for long beyond the lifetime of anybody who's watching this program right now. By the time the helium comes to a concentration where we're all going to be talking like this as soon as it hits the air, we'll have moved technologically much beyond the need for this kind of fusion at this point. But I was told that we could never do anything like this, and the only way is to cut your expenses and cut your energy and not do this and not do that and give more taxes to the government, of course. I love the idea of fusion. I've seen working models of cold fusion and the equations needed to do so. The ability to put it into practice, we don't, I think, are technologically there yet. But the theories are sound, and I've read the mathematical equations for it. And I'd like to see more of this. I definitely would. And immediately following that up, now scientists say breathing is bad for the environment. Gases we exhale contribute to 0.1% of the UK's greenhouse gas emissions. I don't need to go too far into this article, I just want to remind you that the carbon that they are trying to reduce is you. And I always say this when it comes down to energy consumption and climate change. And that is the fact that innovation, without government regulation, has done more for reducing the need for energy than anything else. Hell, electric bills getting expensive has done more for that. I mean, look at, you can't see what I'm seeing behind me, but I've got obviously my Galaxy Note 10 sitting in front of me streaming to Instagram, and I've got 3 flat screen TVs that are all Energy Star related that are feeding as my monitor system that just sip energy compared to what, like when I started computing, when I actually started blogging and talking about this stuff, I was doing this on one cathode ray tube monitor. Hell, the tower that I have here has 12 times the power, computing power, that the old computer I had at the time could do. And it still sips less energy than just the cathode ray tube monitor that I had at the time. You can't usually see over the corner here, but there's a 32-inch TV sitting up there. And then when I moved out of this area, I had a 24-inch TV that basically caused in and of itself, now this is not adjusted for inflation, but the same amount of monthly expenditures in energy as every light in the small apartment do combined. And that was just for one set, not including any lights off of this. The more we try to save energy, the more innovation that we have without government regulation. We have gone in astounding directions for this. But it's never enough. What else do we have? A couple more things that I hate. This one. Let me see if I can refresh this one out without having to go back and archive it. But I do have the archiver going. Come on. On-air production. There we go. Continue without supporting this time. Pedestrians already dying at record levels now face Elon Musk Cybertruck. As vehicles get bigger and heavier, they also get deadlier. It's a trend that has some concerned about Tesla's new Cybertruck. A 6,800-pound electric behemoth with sports car acceleration that experts say will be lethal to pedestrians and occupants of lighter vehicles. Except for one problem. We have had vehicles with that kind of weight and that kind of power since the early 60s. I knew somebody in high school that had a 71 Delta 88. That weighed by itself more than a Cybertruck does, and did not have the braking system a Cybertruck does. And its 454 had probably about the sports car level acceleration that they're talking about. This article is number one counting on people that don't know anything about vehicles at all to come back out and say Elon man bad because he bought X and he allowed free speech. And they would love the Cybertruck if it hadn't been for the fact that Elon man bad. They would love it because, hey, we've got an electric truck, it's kind of cool, it's bulletproof, and it hauls heavy stuff without loud diesel, loud gas engine. Ford's 6.7 diesel has roughly about the same torque and horsepower output of a Cybertruck. And an F-250 weighs about 6,800 pounds. Now, the F-250 has a very, very good braking system on it now at this point. The Cybertruck has the addition of regenerative braking that basically has an alternator in each of the wheels that provides drag on this, that provides an extra slowdown off of that. I would argue the Cybertruck has better brakes than vehicles that we already have out there that are of this weight that are in common use right now. But, again, Elon man bad. Let's do these last couple here. This one. This one. Taking a poke at our history. Fox News. Washington Post column asks whether Boston Tea Party was terrorism committed by black-faced white men. Now, they have to add this one in here because it has to be all blackface because they dressed as the natives when they did this. But, yes, it was terrorism. That's been in common knowledge since 1775. Yes, of course it was terrorism. One of the mildest forms of terrorism, basically they just took one of the luxuries away to do it. But yeah, there were people that were being fought and thrown overboard with the tea. The mob destroyed goods worth really $2 million in today's money, all because they didn't want to obey a duly passed law, the column stated, which is, by the way, based. A new column in the Washington Post offered a deconstruction of one of the most iconic moments in America's founding era, wondering if the Boston Tea Party was really an act of terrorism done by white men wearing an early form of blackface. Post contributing columnist Theodore Johnson speculated as to whether Americans' heroic mythologizing of the rebellious act in Boston Harbor in response to the British Tea Act of 1773 was the correct interpretation of the actual events that day. Okay, you can argue whether or not the Americans were in the right or not, based on your stance on how Britain was doing, and given the amount of power that people are trying to put over to the federal government. I can understand some British-focused things coming off of this at this point. But nobody denies that this was terrorism. There is nobody in the world that denies that what happened on that day in 1773 was terrorism. And the last thing, this is something that comes out every Christmas. And I've talked about it every Christmas, I think, since we started off. The attempt to rewrite Jesus at the time of his birth into being something that he was not. I've not seen it from the same person, but I've seen a message like this every year since I found out what Islam was. Which, by the way, that's been 22 years. And I've seen something like this go around media, social media, chat rooms, something somewhere, every single year. For as long as I've known what Islam was. Joram von Kleberen, X's out. Jesus was a Muslim. This means he submitted to God. That's 2 lies in 2 sentences. He proclaimed he could do nothing by himself. That's a stretch for that particular verse. He prayed with his face on the ground, and his mother Mary covered her hair, which were all practices of late stage Judaism at the time. He did not eat pork because he was a Jew, and in his own language, Aramaic, God is called Allah. That is true, by the way. That's the only true thing in this statement. Well, technically, Mary mother covered her hair and he didn't eat pork. But these last 3 true statements do not make him a Muslim, which was not even a thing for another 500 years after he was walking around. But we see this all the time. I mean, the only people who don't try to claim Jesus are the Jews. Even they go in as far as to say, oh yes, no, we believe he was there. We believe he was a very powerful man. And a little bit of a misunderstanding over on about the turn of the century, but we believe he was there. We just don't believe he was the Messiah. But every movement, the progressives, the communists, the socialists, they all tried to proclaim that Jesus is something that he was not. He submitted to God. No, he did not. He was God. And he was very open about saying that too. He proclaimed he could do nothing by himself because he is a triune. There are 3 in 1 without the Father and the Holy Spirit. He prayed with his face on the ground, as Jews did at the time. And his mother Mary covered her hair, as Jews did at the time. He did not eat pork. Let me explain something to you. Jews have not eaten pork since Lot. That's 4,000 years prior to Jesus. And yes, in Aramaic, God is called Allah. That is correct. Because while Aramaic is distinctly separate from Arabic, they do carry I can't think of the word that I'm looking for, a similar root language. Look, I understand what you believe about the Christ, but don't lie about him to make him something that he's not, to fit your political agenda. And yes, I understand, again, even saying that's going to be a thing for the entirety of life. Alright, that's all I have. That's it. We're done. Interesting time tonight. Thanks for coming back, by the way, you guys, on a Thursday night. I know, again, we've done a once a week contemporary stream for, how long have we been doing this? I took September off, so October, November, and we're in the last couple weeks of December. So for about 3 months, we've only done this once a week, but yeah, there was just too much to do. So let's throw some outro music up, which I've got to go find again, because, hey, we got to restart every single time we play Final Fantasy X, because for whatever reason, my USB won't recognize if it's been unplugged and then plugged back in. I gotta ask you all about what's going on with that and why that is, why that's a thing and why we have to deal with that. But we can do that off air. We got to head out of here for the night. So, with that, thanks everybody who came by, hung out, chatted in the live chat. What's going on with that? And all you people, the new people, of course, Sully, coming in and joining us as well. Hope to see you again, maybe in a gaming stream. I don't know if the news is quite your speed, but I do hope to see you again at some point off of here. But take care. Have a fantastic night. Hug your family, hug your friends. Have a fantastic Christmas, by the way, if I don't see you tomorrow for Fallout Friday. Hope you get everything that you wanted. Hope you get everything you were looking for. And you get to see some family and get some great food. It'll be a great time, I'm sure. But we will be back here tomorrow for Fallout Friday. And back on Tuesday for Contemporary. I anticipate Contemporary is going to be a little bit slow this week because we'll probably talk a lot about the Colorado ballot access. But let's be realistic. Not a lot of people are going to want to write a lot of articles over the next few days because they're going to be doing like what I hope you guys are doing and spending time with family and friends. Take care. Have a fantastic night. We will see you here next time for more news, more headlines, and more Contemporary. And until then, I am Jay Edgar, and this is Contemporary.